Shalom, shalom. I'm Rabbi Shalomoh, and this is Rabbi Yehudah, and
Shalom.
this is our second part in our series for Pesach, and we'll be discussing Chametz.
All right, so if you didn't watch the first video, which is Kashrut Le Pesach, getting ready to make your house kosher for Pesach, watch that video first, because then you'll understand basically what we're talking about when it comes to Chametz. But this is more particular to Chametz and not kashruting your house, purging your house from the Chametz. So what is Chametz? So Rav, Shalomoh and I will be covering what is Chametz.
Right. Well, Chametz is, first of all, the first five species, which is wheat, oat, rye, barley, and spelt. Okay? It becomes Chametz when it is enacted with any type of liquid, okay, which would cause it to rise. Okay, that's when it becomes Chametz out of those five species. And I'm going to let Rabbi Yehudah talk about oat and spelt because there is difference of opinions in certain communities. Okay.
Right. Well, I'm just going to add on to what he just said about the five species. These are commonly known as Chametz, and the reason why that is, a lot of people think that leavening has anything to do with something that rises. Some people think today baking soda is leavening, and that's not what it is. Baking soda is not leavening. Although it has leavening properties, it is not leaven, it's not Chametz. And the reason why the five species are very important is because those are the things that were used to make bread. So according to Torah, five species, and Talmud, our sages, talk about five species that were responsible for this. So the reason why we have what he just enumerated of these five species are from traditions. And so in the Talmud, they're named in Aramaic, and a lot of these definitions were not unified or transmitted, on a consistent basis, and therefore you had different opinions on the five species. However, just like Rav said, on oats did not fulfill, or does not fulfill, the description of one of the five species given by the sages or the judges of Israel found in Talmud. And so therefore there is an argument, a debate, if you may, about oats. And if you think about it, we are from the school of thought that Chametz are all gluten. Therefore, oats does not fulfill not only the description. When it makes contact with liquid, it takes a much longer time, maybe a day or two, before it might end up puffing. So it was no concern whether it was activated by liquids like the other four species. Now, when it comes down to rye, there's another dispute among these scholars in Judaism that rye was not one of the problems because it's not native to Israel. The geographic locations and the climate of that geographic location of Israel is not conducive for the agriculture and the production of rye.
Right, rye is usually grown in a more colder
climate, absolutely. Right. So therefore, there's a dispute there by our scholars. Be as it may, there are people out here who might be machmir, people who are strict, and they would still like to stay away from oats and rye just to be safe. We have no issue with that. All right? The next issue is seor. You want to talk about that?
No, go right ahead, bro.
Seor is commonly known as yeast. And yeast is a type of fungus, and it's used to make things rise. And seor actually literally means leftover. Now, why is that? Well, if you did some studying, some history, you find out that it was in ancient Egypt that really invented the process of using yeast in baking goods. All right. However, when they used this yeast, they would take part of the bread that they baked with the yeast. In other words, recycling it, and so they would take that part. That part is called leftover. So it's no wonder why yeast is called seor. And today, a lot of people use that in baking for making a sourdough bread or yeast rolls, whatever. They would take that morsel that's left over and use it to reactivate the next dough that they make. So that's why it's called seor. So in context, when the Torah talks about staying away from seor, it has everything to do with the bread. So it's different from Chametz. It is called seor, but the chametz being 5 species, baking soda not being chametz. Now you understand. If you have any more questions, post them down below, and we'll do whatever we can to answer those questions further.
Right.
The se'or, the question is, what is se'or? I told you, it's yeast. However, that's a segue to our next comment about wine. You want to take over that? Or?
Yeah, you can go right ahead.
Okay, since I'm in the roll.
You're on
I'm on the roll. I'm on the roll. So here we go. Wine. Can we use wine? Now, in our community, there's been a debate a long time about the use of wine. We use wine. Rabbi Matthew, blessed memory, used wine, and many of the rabbis throughout commandment keepers and other places use wine. Now, wine, you do need yeast. And so a lot of people say, it's wine because you need yeast, it's fermented. We do not drink wine because it's fermentation. And se'or is one of the biggest properties or factors in fermentation. Okay. All right. However, when wine becomes wine, it's completed the fermentation process. And for some of you says, well, I don't want to have anything that have any fermentation. You got to remember, se'or is everywhere. Se'or is a fungus. Fungus is in, right now when we're talking, we can't see it, in the air. All right. When you have fruit, fungus is in there. You have juice, fungus is in there. Se'or is everywhere. So you have to keep in context what se'or we're talking about. What se'or the Torah is talking about. And the Torah is more particular about the se'or in bread. However, we still refrain from se'or as much as we possibly can. Now, and then we're talking about logically and rationally staying away from se'or. So when we're talking about staying away from se'or in an unrational sense, they don't have fruit in your home, don't have any juice in your home. You can't even do the Pesah over juice because you have se'or in your juice. Yes. It's a small amount, but you just can't escape se'or. Se'or is everywhere. So you have to understand context means everything. So wine is fine. I know, I rhyme. Anyway, for Pesah. And therefore, it's been a long tradition from ancient times to use wine. And to say today, wine is not good is mockery to our ancestors 2,000 plus years ago when they used wine for Pesach. Anyway, I think we finished that. I'd be remiss if we didn't give a uverakha, blessing for those who've been afflicted, Shalomoh, for those afflicted with the coronavirus and this plague and this pandemic. And we pray that the Most High continue to bless all of us who have not been exposed. Amen. And may the Most High save us in this time of turmoil. Amen. All right? If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, below, and the bell for notification. Thank you very much. Rob, you like to say something?
That's it. Stay safe. Trust in Hashem. Put Hashem first, and everything else will work out just beautifully. Amen.
All right, so stay tuned for our next video on Masa. All right. If you didn't watch the video prior to this, please go back and watch that video, and then you can watch the video on Masa. Be'ez Hashem, we have that video posted soon. Shalom to all of you, and have a safe visit.